Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The small town of Maplewood, nestled in the shadows of towering pines, often lulled its inhabitants into a false sense of security. Autumn leaves painted the streets in hues of amber and crimson, while the air carried a crispness that was both refreshing and foreboding. Children played on the sidewalks, laughter echoing through the stillness. Yet beneath the surface of this quaint paradise lay dark undercurrents waiting to surface. One fateful afternoon, the community's tranquility was shattered. A local fisherman, a man named Harold Montague, found himself anchored at the mouth of Blackwater Creek, a spot he frequented for decades but had never approached with this sense of dread. The water, usually clear, was murky, and the plants along the bank, whispering secrets, simply walked away as the shadows lengthened. While gutting a modest catch that day, Harold's hand brushed against something unmoving lodged beneath the rushing water. He hesitated, his instincts sending alarms ringing through his mind. But curiosity compelled him forward. The sight that met his eyes chilled him to the bone, partially submerged, discolored object that was unmistakably human. The moment became etched in Harold's mind, forever altering the landscape of Maplewood. What lay buried in the depths of Blackwater Creek remained unanswered, each ripple in the water seeming to hold secrets too dark for this town to bear. A storm was brewing, and Maplewood would never be the same. In a town where everyone knew your name, the question loomed larger than life. Who was the victim? And why had their story ended in these twisted depths? The victim. As news of Harold Montague's shocking discovery rippled through Maplewood, an atmosphere thick with dread settled over the town. Residents gathered in hushed circles at the local diner, eyes turned toward the television mounted in the corner, where news anchors reported the grim development. Sabine Ellis, a vibrant young woman cherished by many, had been missing for 3 days. She was a familiar face in the community, her laughter often ringing out over the soft strains of country music that played at local gatherings. Sabine, a sociology major at the nearby college, had dreams of making the world a better place, and her infectious spirit endeared her to everyone she met. As the investigation unfolded, her friends painted a portrait of a devoted daughter, a passionate activist, and a beloved companion. But with each passing hour, the panic that once fueled optimism turned into despair. Detectives combed through the fragments of her life, examining her whereabouts before she vanished. They learned she had attended a charity event on the night of her disappearance, an event that had drawn a diverse crowd from Maplewood and the surrounding areas. Security footage revealed her animated discussions with various attendees, laughter spilling freely into the air, tinged with the promise of a night still unfurling. Turning to Sabine's closest friends, investigators gathered accounts of her last known movements. They hoped to catch a glimpse of vulnerability, perhaps an overlooked detail that might lead them closer to unraveling the mystery of her fate. Instead, all they found was a haunting silence, as questions about Sabine's whereabouts intensified and fear gripped the town tighter. The crime scene. Once the coroner's van pulled away from Blackwater Creek, the tranquil surface of the water appeared to mock the chaos it had concealed. The once vibrant life of Maplewood stood still, punctuated only by the clap of police tape being stretched across the banks, while detectives, donned in gloves and notepads, meticulously combed through the surrounding area. The sunlight, filtered through the heavy branches overhead, cast eerie shadows upon the landscape, as if nature itself mourned the loss. At the center of the investigation was the harrowing discovery. Sabine Ellis, her body marred by the suffocating grasp of the water. The autopsy would later reveal the details of her death. But for now, the grim reality was that her life had been extinguished far too soon. Crime scene investigators moved with steady precision, documenting every inch of the area while preserving the essence of what remained a young woman betrayed by someone she had once trusted. The surrounding foliage proved to be a difficult adversary, concealing evidence and perhaps offering insights to those willing to look closely. Blades of grass bent beneath the weight of a fearsome secret, while fallen leaves crunched beneath the booted feet of investigators examining scratch marks on the nearby rock. Several officers noticed a shallow dip in the embankment, suggesting a struggle had taken place. The pieces of this tragic puzzle were scattered, but a disquieting pattern began to emerge. Detectives speculated on the events leading up to that fateful night. They knew there must be someone among the townsfolk who held the key to understanding how Sabine had become ensnared in the deadly snare of violence. As they meticulously gathered evidence, no conclusion could yet be reached, leaving the community to linger in uncertainty and fear. The early investigation. In the dimly lit conference room of the Maplewood Police Department, the clatter of coffee mugs mingled with the urgency of whispered conversations. Detectives Brantley and Lawson stood over a large corkboard that was slowly filling with photographs of Sabine Ellis, her infectious smile frozen in time and various items that had been collected from the crime scene. Each picture told a story, but it was the threads connecting them that needed untangling. As the initial investigation unfolded, the detectives divided their focus between interviewing potential witnesses and scrutinizing any digital footprints left behind in Sabine's world. They explored her social media accounts, tracing her online interactions in the days leading up to her disappearance. Painted a picture of a woman engaged with life, advocating for causes close to her heart, but it also revealed unsettling exchanges with an individual named Caleb Hawkins, a former classmate who had reportedly become infatuated with her. Days turned into long nights as the detectives pieced together Sabine's last known movements. On the night of the charity event, Caleb was seen lingering at the fringe of the room, his gaze often drawn to her. Friends described him as charming but clingy, a sentiment that turned chilling in the context of Sabine's sudden disappearance. Searching for answers, the detectives arranged to speak with Caleb, hoping his alibi would hold as they dug deeper into his connection to Sabine. Simultaneously, the detectives canvassed the town, distributing flyers bearing Sabine's face and details of her disappearance. The warmth of Maplewood had transformed into a tangible sense of dread. Once trustful neighbors exchanged wary glances, mindful that even here, nestled in the haven of magnolia trees and open skies, darkness could creep in without notice. With each passing hour, the pressure mounted. Sabine deserved justice, and the weight of that burden pressed heavily on the shoulders of those sworn to protect. The dead ends. As the days turned into weeks, the initial wave of urgency surrounding Sabine's disappearance began to wane. Yet the torment of uncertainty clung heavily to the town. Investigators braced themselves for a relentless pursuit of clues, knowing that the elusiveness of a peaceful resolution could shatter community morale. However, with each passing day, lead after lead brought them only closer to dead ends rather than answers. Detectives Brantley and Lawson intensified their scrutiny of Caleb Hawkins, who had cooperated with them to a degree. Yet his responses shifted from coherent to defensive when pressed about the timeline of the charity event. His alibi seemed to lack corroboration, with few supporting witnesses to confirm his claims of being home by midnight. Text messages between Caleb and Sabine hinted at strained interactions that escalated into heated arguments But without conclusive evidence, suspicions remained just that, suspicion. The detectives also pursued Sabine's social circle in earnest, reaching out to friends and acquaintances in search of any dirt that could hint at a rivalry, or jealousy, anything that could illuminate potential motives. They continually crossed paths with familiar faces, but nobody could provide concrete information. Each interview, filled with shared memories and laughter, only served to intensify the gloom, unraveling more than it resolved. Frustration mounted as they sifted through digital clues. A surge of tips poured in, some credible, many not that distracted from the central narrative. A vague call reporting a suspicious vehicle near the creek. A witness claiming to see a couple arguing in the park days before Sabine's disappearance. Each one unraveling more questions without actual lead. As Maplewood slowly returned to normalcy, the weight of Sabine's absence bore down on the town like a relentless fog. The feeling of helplessness nestled comfortably into the community's fabric, growing heavier with each fleeting moment as those who loved her found their voices lost in the shadows of doubt. A break in the case. As weeks of drawn-out uncertainty loomed over Maplewood, hope flickered like a candle in the wind. Just as the frustration within the police department transformed into quiet resignation, a call came in that reignited the spark of investigation. It was a tip unlike any that had dripped like slow poison into their case. Feliza, a woman from a neighboring town, had stepped forward, her trembling voice filled with urgency. "I saw them," she insisted, her breath hitching as she recounted what she'd witnessed the night Sabine went missing. "A couple near Old Town Park. They were arguing pretty loudly. I thought it was just a spat, but he looked..." The woman described the man's physicality, his dark hair, and the distinctive jacket he had worn. The details matched Caleb's appearance, raising the detective's eyebrows and quickened intrigue. With renewed momentum, Detectives Brantley and Lawson delved into the lead, tracing the woman's account to a few known hangouts. In the vicinity. Their inquiries led them to Old Town Park, where they hastily scoured the area, seeking any sign of evidence left behind in the wake of the confrontation. Perhaps a discarded item or a witness willing to come forward would finally tie Caleb to the horrors that had unfolded that fateful night. Hours turned into days of meticulous searching until they stumbled upon a promising detail. A torn piece of fabric snagged on a low branch near a secluded picnic area, stained with what appeared to be congealed blood. Forensic investigators were called in for analysis, and the detectives felt a pulse of adrenaline. This could be the breakthrough they so desperately needed. Another positive discovery emerged from forensic analysis of phone records. A ping from Caleb Hawkins' device that eerily aligned with the time of Sabine's disappearance. The detectives knew they were approaching a precipice, bouncing between anticipation and trepidation as they set their sights on gathering more evidence to confront Caleb with undeniable truth. Wow. The suspect. The investigation had entered a tense new stage as Detectives Brantley and Lawson prepared to confront Caleb Hawkins. Armed with newly unearthed evidence, the air in the police department crackled with an electrical tension. The torn piece of fabric, matching the jacket Caleb had been seen in that night, had sent shockwaves through the team. Coupled with the eyewitness account and the incriminating phone records, they had built a fragile but potentially pivotal case against him. Caleb was brought into the station under the pretense of a standard follow-up interview. The atmosphere in the interrogation room was thick-heavy with impending confrontation. As he entered, the usual bravado that surrounded him faltered subtly, replaced by a tight-lipped nervousness that the detectives immediately noted. "Caleb," Detective Brantley began, his gaze steady, "we need to discuss your whereabouts on the night of Sabine's disappearance." The mention of her name hung in the air, suffocatingly palpable. Caleb's demeanor shifted as he stammered through his initial reassurances claims of innocence and confusion. Yet the detectives pressed onward, steering the conversation towards the disputes he had allegedly had with Sabine, his voice steady and unwavering as they recited the evidence against him. With each revelation, Caleb's confidence began to crumble like dry leaves underfoot. They displayed the torn fabric, evidence of their suspicions, allowing the visual impact to settle over him like a shroud. The interplay of fear and defiance flickered across his face as he attempted to maintain his innocence, claiming he had seen her leave the event with someone else. But the detectives could sense the cracks forming, the defenses crumbling beneath the weight of undeniable truths. The room felt charged with possibility as new doubts began to flood Caleb's mind. The realization that the noose was tightening around him rendered him increasingly evasive. After a lengthy interrogation session that stretched for hours, the detectives ended the meeting without loosening any confessions. But they sparked an anxiety within him, something palpable that told them they were on the right track. They would return, armed with more evidence and a sharper focus, determined to pry loose a confession that had remained stubbornly out of reach. The trial. Months slipped away from Maplewood like leaves scattering in the autumn breeze, yet the haunting specter of Sabine Ellis's tragic fate remained suspended over the small town. When the court date was finally set, anticipation mingled with disbelief in the hearts and minds of the townsfolk as they prepared to witness the culmination of a case that had gripped them unrelentingly since that fateful day. The courtroom was tense, a microcosm of the anxiety that enveloped Maplewood. Wooden pews filled with concerned citizens and family members turned the space into a living gallery of grief and hope. Sabine's parents occupied the front row, their faces ravaged by loss, an unwavering resolve etched into their features. They had waited patiently, hoping for clarity, for justice, perhaps healing. Caleb Hawkins appeared before the judge, the weight of countless hours behind bars clinging to him. Once self-assured and unyielding, he looked diminished, stripped of the bravado he once wore, now replaced by a semblance of vulnerability. As the opening statements unfolded, attorneys painted sharply contrasting portraits of Sabine's life and Caleb's alleged actions that night. Witnesses testified, their words inching the jury toward understanding the events leading to that dark evening. The torn fabric was unveiled, and an expert testimony dissected the stories woven within its threads, quiet yet resounding evidence of a struggle that had transpired. As the trial's weight bore down upon Caleb, the closing arguments evoked tears and outrage. The prosecution's case lingered in the air like a pall, asserting that the evidence had woven a narrative of guilt that demanded accountability. The defense contended that reasonable doubt clouded the matter, citing lack of direct evidence linking him to the crime. The jury filed out, leaving silence in their wake. Huddled in the jury room, they deliberated over the intricacies of the case, weighed the testimony against their own moral compass. In a town once defined by safety and trust, now every member of the community held their breath, expelling their thoughts and the truths that lay buried. After hours of anxious discussion, a verdict emerged, one that would echo through the halls of Maplewood for lifetimes to come. The clinking of the bailiff's gavel would herald not just the end of a trial, but the opening of new dialogue one steeped in healing and remembrance for the vibrant spirit of Sabine Ellis. The aftermath. The gavel's echo faded, but its resonance lingered like a ghost haunting Maplewood. The verdict had been reached, and as the jury announced their decision, emotions erupted in the courtroom. A mix of cheers, tears, and palpable anguish wrapped around the townsfolk. Some found solace in justice served, while others were lost in the fog of grief and despair. Their world changed irreparably. Caleb Hawkins was found guilty of the charges against him. The unanimous verdict, delivering a sentence that felt heavy with finality, a measure of justice for Sabine's tragic end. As he was led away in handcuffs, whispers ricocheted throughout the courtroom. Questions swirling about how someone once deemed one of their own could commit such a heinous act. In the days that followed began to piece itself back together. Vigils sprang up in Sabine's honor, like flowers pushing through cracked concrete. Locals gathered to remember her laughter, her spirit, and the dreams she had nurtured. Candles flickered at twilight, casting a warm glow over faces adorned with sorrow and resilient hope. Songs filled the air, uniting friends and strangers alike in a celebration of a life extinguished far too soon. Yet, as the cold winter winds set in, a different kind of chill swept through the town. It came not just from the changing seasons, but from the uncertainty that now permeated their lot. The trust once inherent in Maplewood felt fragile, shaken by the realization that darkness could lurk amidst familiar places. Survivors' guilt gnawed at those close to Sabine. They questioned their own roles in preventing the tragedy. An air of caution settled over social interactions, and frequent exchanges were laced with underlying wariness as friends grappled with reconciling their memories of vibrant camaraderie with the harsh reality that one among them could harbor such darkness. Meanwhile, Sabine's family worked to turn their grief into a legacy. They established a scholarship fund in her name, aimed at inspiring youth to pursue their passions just as Sabine had always encouraged those around her. It was a beacon of light in a town grappling with heartbreak, reminding everyone that while darkness could rear its head, a flicker of hope could ignite the determined spirit to rise above and remember. Reflection. As the seasons shifted from the biting cold of winter to the gentle warmth of spring, Maplewood slowly emerged from the shadow of tragedy. Yet, as the vibrant green buds pushed through the soil, symbolizing renewal, it was clear that the community would forever carry the scars of loss. Residents moved through their daily lives with a guarded pace. Smiles were offered, but undercurrents of sorrow and fear rippled beneath the surface, a reminder of the fragility of life. In the aftermath of the trial, many grappled with what it meant to reclaim their sense of safety. The local diner, once a hub of laughter and camaraderie, had become a quiet space of solace for those sharing their stories of remembrance. Here, in this bastion of nostalgia, they reflected on Sabine's legacy, her passion for advocating justice, her bright future, and the deep connections she cultivated within the community that mourned her. As months turned into years, the emotional toll of the tragedy began to take on a different form. Survivors, once paralyzed by grief, sought support through local gatherings, fostering dialogue about violence, mental health, and the importance of community vigilance. Workshops and discussions flourished, emphasizing empowerment and resilience, echoing Sabine's commitment to uplift those around her. In quiet moments, memories of Sabine wafted through the thickening air like whispers from beyond. Her vibrant smile sparked a movement, inspiring individuals to stand tall against injustice. As the sun dipped below the horizon one dusky evening, they gathered once more at the creekside where her journey had been tragically interrupted, honoring her with prayers and shared stories. The water flowed steadily, unyielding in its passage, resembling the continued fight against darkness that galvanized Maplewood. And so, they committed to honoring her memory not just in moments of silence, but as a beacon of light in a world that could sometimes feel enveloped in shadow.